welcome back to the Cartoon Codex. Today we're diving deep into the complete timeline of one of the most influential animated series in television history. We're talking about SpongeBob SquarePants, the show that started as a simple educational comic book and transformed into a multi-billion-dollar franchise that's been on the air for over 25 years. This is the story of how a marine biologist with a passion for animation created something that would define childhood for multiple generations. The story of SpongeBob SquarePants doesn't begin in 1999 when the show first aired, and it doesn't even start in the 1990s when Steven Hillenburg began pitching it to Nickelodeon. The true genesis of this cultural phenomenon traces back to 1984, to a small marine institute in Dana Point, California, and where a young man with dreams of becoming a marine biologist was about to discover his true calling. Stephen McDaniel Hillenburg was born on August 21, 1961, in Lawton, Oklahoma, but grew up in Anaheim, California. From a young age, he was drawn to two seemingly disparate passions, the ocean and art. As a child, Hillenburg was captivated by the documentaries of Jacques Cousteau, those mesmerizing underwater explorations that opened up an alien world just beneath the waves. He'd watch in fascination as Cousteau's cameras revealed the strange, beautiful creatures that inhabited the ocean depths. At the same time, Hillenburg was developing his artistic abilities, spending hours drawing and painting, creating his own imaginative worlds on paper. When it came time for college, Hillenburg initially chose to pursue his love of the ocean, and he enrolled at Humboldt State University in Arcata, California, where he earned a degree in natural resource planning and interpretation, with an emphasis on marine resources. He graduated in 1984, equipped with the knowledge to pursue a career studying the sea. But even during his college years, art was never far from his mind. He minored in art, unable to completely abandon that creative impulse that had been with him since childhood. After graduation, Hillenburg began working at the Orange County Marine Institute, which would later be renamed the Ocean Institute. For 3 years, he taught marine biology to visiting students, leading tide pool explorations and sharing his passion for ocean life. He taught tide pool ecology, nautical history, diversity, and adaptation. And it was during these years at the Institute that Hillenburg began to see how his two passions could intersect in unexpected ways. One of the educational directors at the Institute approached Hillenburg with an interesting proposition. They wanted him to create an educational comic book about tide pool animals that could be used to teach students about marine life. Hillenburg jumped at the opportunity, and the result was The Intertidal Zone, an unpublished educational comic that would become the blueprint for everything that followed. The Intertidal Zone featured anthropomorphic sea creatures living in tide pools, each with their own personalities and quirks. The comic's narrator and co-host was a character called Bob the Sponge, who looked like an actual sea sponge, all organic and irregular, and nothing like the kitchen sponge shape he would later adopt. Other characters included early versions of what would become Patrick Star, Squidward Tentacles, and various other denizens of what would eventually be called Bikini Bottom. The comic was educational, yes, but it was also funny and imaginative, bringing the underwater world to life in ways that textbooks never could. Hillenburg used the Intertidal Zone to teach his students at the Institute, and it was remarkably effective. He could see how the kids responded to these anthropomorphized creatures, how they became more engaged with marine life when it was presented through these character-driven stories. But even as he found success as a marine biology educator, Hillenburg began to realize something important about himself, and he was more interested in art than in his chosen profession. The creative aspect of his work, the drawing and storytelling, excited him more than the scientific side. After spending about 2 years at the Ocean Institute, Hillenburg made a bold decision. He left his teaching position to pursue a career in animation. In 1989, he enrolled at the California Institute of the Arts in Valencia, one of the premier animation schools in the country. At CalArts, Hillenburg studied experimental animation, learning the technical skills that would allow him to bring his creative visions to life. He created several short films during his time there, including Wormholes in 1992, which won him recognition and helped launch his professional animation career. While at CalArts, Hillenburg was influenced by the work of comedians like Charlie Chaplin, Stan Laurel, Jerry Lewis, and Pee Wee Herman. He was particularly drawn to characters who possessed a childlike innocence, characters who approached the world with optimism and naivety, even as chaos erupted around them. These comedic sensibilities would later inform the character of SpongeBob himself, that relentlessly positive personality that remains cheerful no matter how dire the circumstances. Hillenburg's break into professional animation came in 1993, when he was hired to work on Nickelodeon's Rocko's Modern Life. The show, about a wallaby named Rocko navigating modern suburban life, was created by Joe Murray and represented the kind of quirky, offbeat humor that Nickelodeon was becoming known for in the early 90s. Hillenburg started as a director and writer on the show, and his work was impressive enough that he was eventually promoted to creative director for the show's 4th and final season. Working on Rocko's Modern Life was invaluable experience for Hillenburg. He learned the ins and outs of television animation production, how to work with writers' rooms, how to manage production schedules, and how to deal with network executives. He later said that he learned a great deal about writing and producing animation for TV from his time on Rocko. The job also allowed him to pay back his student loans from CalArts, which was no small consideration. But perhaps most importantly, Rocko's Modern Life showed Hillenburg that he could create something of his own. As the show was winding down in 1996, he began thinking about what might come next. He had his experience in animation, got his background in marine biology, and that old educational comic, The Intertidal Zone, sitting in a drawer somewhere. What if he could take those tide pool characters and adapt them for television? In 1996, after Rocko's Modern Life was cancelled, Hillenburg began developing his pitch for a new show. He dug out The Intertidal Zone and started reworking the characters for a television audience. Bob the Sponge underwent the most dramatic transformation. Instead of looking like an actual sea sponge, which Hillenburg knew could be off-putting to audiences, he redesigned the character to look like a kitchen sponge, bright yellow and rectangular. The shape was instantly recognizable and friendly. He gave him a square shape and simple design that would be easy to animate and would stand out visually, and the character's personality was equally important. Hillenburg wanted to create someone who was genuinely innocent and optimistic, someone who saw the best in everyone and everything. He described SpongeBob as childlike and naive, neither quite an adult nor quite a kid. He wanted him to have the enthusiasm and the wonder of a child, but the responsibilities and setting of an adult world. It was a delicate balance, creating a character who could appeal to children while also being interesting enough for adults to watch. The other characters from the Intertidal Zone were also reworked. The starfish became Patrick Star, SpongeBob's best friend, whose stupidity was matched only by his loyalty. The grumpy octopus became Squid with tentacles, and the perpetually miserable neighbor, who just wanted to be left alone to play his clarinet and appreciate high culture. A new character, Sandy Cheeks, was added, a squirrel from Texas who lived in an underwater dome and represented both scientific knowledge and southern charm. Hillenburg also developed Mr. Krabs, the money-obsessed owner of the Krusty Krab restaurant where SpongeBob would work as a fry cook. This detail, SpongeBob's job as a fry cook, came from Hillenburg's own experience working in seafood restaurants during his summers after high school. He'd worked as a fry cook and lobster boiler at a fast food seafood restaurant in Maine, and he remembered the experience vividly. It gave him insight into that particular world, the fast-paced chaos of a kitchen, the interactions between staff and the customers, the pride that could come from doing even a simple job well. The setting was called Bikini Bottom, an underwater city that existed in a world that was simultaneously alien and familiar. The physics were cartoony, water behaving like air, fires burning underwater, and characters able to engage in activities that made no scientific sense. Hillenburg, despite his marine biology background, wasn't interested in realism. He wanted to create a world that felt magical and strange, where anything could happen and logic took a backseat to comedy and imagination. In 1997, Hillenburg was ready to pitch his show to Nickelodeon. He prepared a 7-minute pilot presentation and invited Nickelodeon executives to a special pitch meeting. The presentation itself was theatrical and memorable. Hillenburg showed up wearing a Hawaiian shirt, playing Hawaiian music on a boombox, creating an immediate tropical underwater atmosphere. He brought an underwater terrarium that contained models of all the main characters, showing the executives exactly what the world of Bikini Bottom would look like. The pitch presentation focused on the episode that would eventually become Help Wanted, the series premiere. It told the simple story of SpongeBob applying for a job at the Krusty Krab, being rejected initially, but proving himself by accomplishing an impossible task and earning his position as fry cook. The presentation showcased the show's humor, its heart, and its unique visual style. The Nickelodeon executives were intrigued but had concerns. They worried that children wouldn't be able to relate to SpongeBob because he was an adult character with a job, and they suggested making SpongeBob a child who went to school, with a teacher as an authority figure to make him more childlike and relatable to the target demographic. This kind of note wasn't unusual. Networks often tried to fit new shows into familiar formulas that had worked before. But Hillenburg stood his ground. He knew that making SpongeBob a child would fundamentally change the show he wanted to create. Part of what made the concept interesting was that SpongeBob was an adult who retained childlike wonder and enthusiasm. He wasn't a kid pretending to be grown up. He was a grown-up who never lost his ability to find joy in simple things. Hillenburg was prepared to walk away from the project rather than compromise this core aspect of the show. Fortunately, Hillenburg found a compromise that satisfied both his vision and the network's concerns. He created Mrs. Puff, SpongeBob's boating school teacher. SpongeBob would be an adult with a job, but he'd also be a student trying to get his boating license, perpetually failing his driving tests despite his best efforts. This gave the show a school setting and an authority figure without making SpongeBob himself a child. It was an elegant solution that preserved the show's unique perspective. Nickelodeon greenlit the show, and production began in earnest. Hillenburg assembled a team of talented writers directors and artists, many of whom had worked with him on Rocko's Modern Life. Derek Drymon, who had been Hillenburg's writing partner on Rocko, became creative director. Tim Hill, actor who would later direct the SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run, came aboard as a writer and director. Paul Tibbitt, who would eventually become showrunner after Hillenburg stepped down, joined as well. The writing process for SpongeBob was collaborative and intensive. The team would pitch ideas, break stories, and work together to find the funniest possible versions of every joke. They studied the comedians who had inspired Hillenburg, watching films by Buster Keaton, Stan Laurel, and Jerry Lewis to understand their comic timing and physicality. One particular scene from Jerry Lewis's The Bellboy made a strong impression, where Lewis's character magically fills an auditorium with hundreds of folding chairs in impossible time. That kind of impossible, magical logic would become a staple of SpongeBob's comedy, and the show's visual style was carefully crafted to feel unique. The backgrounds were painted with texture and detail, giving Bikini Bottom a lived-in, tangible quality. The character designs were simple and iconic, easily recognizable even in silhouette. The animation style blended traditional cartoon sensibilities with occasional bursts of experimental techniques, like live-action sequences, stop motion, and highly detailed close-up shots that contrasted with the normally simple character designs. The voice cast was crucial to bringing these characters to life. Tom Kenny, who had worked with Hillenburg on Rocko's Modern Life, was cast as SpongeBob. Kenny created a voice that was high-pitched and energetic, but also capable of emotional depth. He described it as childlike, but not quite a child's voice, in finding that perfect balance that Hillenburg had envisioned. Bill Fagerbakke brought Patrick to life with a dim-witted sweetness that made the character lovable despite his stupidity. Roger Boompas gave Squidward a nasal, pretentious quality that perfectly captured his inflated sense of self-importance. The show's music was another distinctive element. Hillenburg wanted a Hawaiian/tropical sound to evoke the underwater setting. Composer Jeremy Wakefield created a soundtrack heavy on steel drums, ukuleles, and other island instruments that gave the show an immediate sonic identity. The theme song, written by Hillenburg, Derek Drymon, Mark Harrison, and Blaze Smith, was performed by Painty the Pirate and a crew of pirate singers, establishing the nautical theme right from the start. By early 1999, the first season of SpongeBob SquarePants was ready. Nickelodeon scheduled a preview airing for May 1st, 1999, right after that year's Kids' Choice Awards, a prime slot that would expose the show to millions of young viewers. The official premiere was set for July 17, 1999. After years of development, countless hours of work, and Hillenburg's persistence in maintaining his creative vision, SpongeBob SquarePants was about to enter the world. Nobody, not even Hillenburg himself, could have predicted what would happen next. The show that had started as an educational comic about tide pools was about to become a cultural phenomenon that would define a generation and change the landscape of television animation forever. But before it could become a legend, it had to survive its first season. The Golden Age, seasons 1 to 3, 1999 to 2004. The date was May 1st, 1999. The Kids' Choice Awards had just ended, and kids across America settled in to see what came next on Nickelodeon. What they got was Help Wanted, Reef Blower, and Tea at the Tree Dome. the first 3 segments of a new show about a talking sponge who lived in a pineapple under the sea. By the time that first episode ended, SpongeBob SquarePants had announced itself as something special, something different from anything else on television. The premiere episode, Help Wanted, was a perfect introduction to the world and characters. We meet SpongeBob as he wakes up to his foghorn alarm, instantly enthusiastic about the day ahead. His goal is simple: get a job at the Krusty Krab. His method is hilariously overwrought. He prepares for the interview by practicing in front of a mirror for hours, psyching himself up with a motivational speech. When he finally arrives at the restaurant, Mr. Krabs is skeptical of hiring someone so eager and innocent, while Squidward actively tries to sabotage him by sending him on an impossible errand to find a hydrodynamic spatula with port and starboard attachments and turbo drive. What makes the episode work is how it establishes SpongeBob's character through action rather than exposition. We learn everything we need to know about him by watching how he approaches this challenge. When faced with an impossible task, he doesn't give up or complain. Instead, with Patrick's help, he accomplishes something even more impressive, defending the Krusty Krab from a horde of anchovy customers. The episode ends with SpongeBob earning his position and, more importantly, earning our affection. We're rooting for this optimistic sponge. We want him to succeed, and we're delighted when he does. The numbers told the story of the show's immediate success. That first episode drew 6.9 million viewers, an impressive number for a brand new show. Within its first month on air, SpongeBob SquarePants had overtaken Pokémon as the highest-rated Saturday morning children's program. The show was holding an average national Nielsen rating of 4.9 among children aged 2 through 11, representing 1.9 million viewers in that demographic alone. But perhaps most surprising was the adult audience. Nearly 40% of the show's viewers were aged 18 to 34, and a demographic that networks didn't typically associate with children's cartoons. The first season, which aired from May 1999 to April 2000, consisted of 20 episodes. Each episode contained 2 11-minute segments, allowing the writers to tell complete stories while maintaining a brisk pace. The episodes range from simple concepts executed brilliantly, like pizza delivery, where SpongeBob and Squidward get lost trying to deliver a pizza, to more surreal adventures like SB-129, where Squidward accidentally travels through time and encounters the terrifying void of nothingness. What set SpongeBob apart from other children's shows of the era was its writing. The stories were tight and focused, usually built around a single concept that would be explored from multiple angles. In Hooky, the central idea is fishhooks appearing in jellyfish fields, and the entire episode revolves around SpongeBob being tempted to play on them despite Mr. Krabs' warnings. There are no unnecessary subplots or tangents. Every scene builds on what came before, creating narratives that feel complete and satisfying despite their brief runtime. The humor worked on multiple levels. Children laughed at the physical comedy, the silly voices, and the colorful characters getting into absurd situations. Adults appreciated the clever wordplay, the subtle references, and the surprisingly sophisticated character dynamics. An episode like Dying for Pie operates as slapstick comedy for kids, with Squidward and Mr. Krabs believing SpongeBob has eaten an explosive pie, while adults could appreciate the darker humor of watching Squidward try to give his co-worker one perfect last day before his supposedly imminent death. The show's visual style also contributed to its appeal. The backgrounds in these early seasons were gorgeously detailed, painted with texture and depth that gave Bikini Bottom a tangible reality. You could almost feel the rough coral of the buildings, see the way light filtered down through the water, sense the atmosphere of this undersea world. The character animation was expressive and fluid, with faces contorting into impossible shapes for comedic effect. When SpongeBob was scared, his eyes would bug out and his body would shake like jelly. When Squidward was angry, his whole face would turn red and steam would shoot from his ears. The second season, which premiered in October 2000, uncemented SpongeBob's place as a cultural phenomenon. Episodes from this season would become some of the most beloved and quoted in the series' entire run. Sailor Mouth introduced the concept of sentence enhancers, bad words censored by dolphin sounds, giving kids a way to explore the taboo of profanity in a safe, funny context. Band Geeks delivered one of the most triumphant endings in the show's history, with Squidward's ragtag marching band performing Sweet Victory at the Bubble Bowl halftime show. Shanghaied let viewers into the world of the Flying Dutchman and featured the show's signature blend of spooky atmosphere and silly humor. Chocolate with Nuts showcased SpongeBob and Patrick's attempt at entrepreneurship, selling chocolate bars door to door and learning about the art of salesmanship. The episode introduced the character of the chocolate guy, whose obsessive screaming of chocolate became an instant meme before memes were even part of common parlance. FUN explored the relationship between SpongeBob and Plankton, suggesting that even villains might be redeemed through friendship, complete with a catchy song about what fun really means. Season 2 also demonstrated the show's willingness to experiment with format and style. Pressure pitted sea creatures against Sandy in a competition to see who could survive on land, turning into a surprisingly tense survival story. The Graveyard Shift was a genuine horror comedy, with the tale of the hash-slinging slasher creating atmosphere and suspense before undercutting it with absurd reveals. These episodes showed that SpongeBob could be more than just a silly comedy, and it could explore different genres and tones while maintaining its core identity. The third season, running from October 2001 to October 2004, represents what many fans consider the absolute peak of the series. This is when everything came together perfectly, when the writers had complete confidence in the world and characters, when the animation was at its most expressive, when the humor was at its sharpest. Episodes like Krusty Krab Training Video, which parodies corporate training films, demonstrated incredible attention to detail in both writing and visual style. New Student Starfish explored the classroom dynamics at Mrs. Puff's boating school with sophisticated character work. The camping episode delivered simple but perfect comedy as SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward camp out in Squidward's backyard. One of the reasons these early seasons work so well is that the characters, while simple in concept, are actually quite nuanced in execution. SpongeBob's optimism isn't portrayed as foolishness. It's a genuine worldview that, while sometimes causing problems, also brings joy to those around him. Patrick's stupidity is balanced by his loyalty and occasional flashes of wisdom. Squidward's grumpiness is understandable. He's an artist and intellectual stuck in a dead-end job, surrounded by neighbors who drive him crazy. We can sympathize with his desire for peace and quiet even as we laugh at his failures. Mr. Krabs' obsession with money is played for comedy, but the show also gives him moments of genuine care for his employees and his daughter Pearl. Sandy's identity as a land creature living underwater creates natural comedic opportunities, but she's also portrayed as brilliant and capable, never just a one-note stereotype. Even Plankton, the show's nominal villain, is given depth and pathos. His schemes to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula are driven by his desire to succeed, to prove himself, to have his own restaurant be as popular as his rivals. The show's moral framework was subtle but consistent. SpongeBob taught lessons about friendship, perseverance, and kindness without being preachy or heavy-handed. Episodes would often end with characters learning something about themselves or others, but these lessons emerged naturally from the stories rather than being tacked on. In Ripped Pants, SpongeBob learns that making people laugh with the same joke repeatedly stops being funny and starts being annoying. In I'm Your Biggest Fanatic, SpongeBob discovers that his hero Jeffrey Jellyfish isn't worth idolizing. These weren't after-school special moments. They were organic conclusions to well-told stories. The Hawaiian-influenced music became iconic during these seasons. Songs like the FUN song, the Krusty Krab pizza song, and the Campfire song became earworms that children would sing endlessly, to their parents' mixed delight and annoyance. The background score used steel drums, ukuleles, and tropical percussion to create an instantly recognizable sound that evoked the undersea setting while maintaining a cheerful, upbeat tone. The success of these early seasons transformed SpongeBob from a hit show into a cultural touchstone. Merchandise flooded stores, from toys and clothing to food products and home goods. Theme park attractions were developed. Video games were released, including Battle for Bikini Bottom, which became a cult classic in its own right. The show's catchphrases entered everyday language. People would respond to questions with I'm ready," in SpongeBob's distinctive voice. The phrase, "Is mayonnaise an instrument?" became a way to ask absurd questions. "The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma" became shorthand for pretending to be deep. Internet culture embraced SpongeBob with particular enthusiasm. As meme culture began to develop in the early 2000s, images from the show became popular reaction images and macros, and the show's expressive character designs and absurdist humor made it perfect for online sharing. Scenes were endlessly remixed, quoted, and repurposed. SpongeBob became the language through which a generation communicated online. By 2002, SpongeBob SquarePants had become Nickelodeon's second highest rated children's program after Rugrats, and it was helping the network dominate Saturday morning ratings. The show was winning awards, including Emmy nominations and Annie Awards for animation. Critics who initially dismissed it as just another kid's cartoon were reassessing, recognizing the sophisticated writing and unique visual style. Entertainment Weekly would later name SpongeBob one of the 100 greatest characters of the last 20 years. TV Guide would rank him as the 9th greatest cartoon character of all time, but success brought new pressures and decisions. Hillenburg had always envisioned SpongeBob as having a beginning, middle, and end. He wasn't interested in running the show forever, churning out episodes indefinitely until it became tired and stale. As the 3rd season was wrapping production, Paramount Pictures approached him about making a SpongeBob movie. Hillenburg saw this as an opportunity to tell a bigger story, to give the series a proper conclusion, and to move on to other creative projects. In 2002, Hillenburg halted production on new television episodes to focus entirely on the movie. The show went on hiatus, and the team poured their energy into creating what was intended to be the series finale. Hillenburg directed the film himself, working with the show's core creative team to craft a story worthy of ending the series. The movie would chronicle SpongeBob and Patrick's journey to Shell City to retrieve King Neptune's stolen crown and save Mr. Krabs from execution. As the movie entered production and the third season wrapped up, fans had no idea that they were experiencing the end of an era. The golden age of SpongeBob SquarePants was coming to a close, though the show itself was far from over. What would come next would be different, for better and worse, as the series entered a new phase without its creator at the helm. The first movie and creative transition, 2004 to 2005. The SpongeBob SquarePants movie premiered on November 14th, 2004, at Grauman's Chinese Theatre in Hollywood, complete with a yellow carpet and numerous celebrities bringing their children to see the underwater adventure on the big screen. The movie was released nationwide 5 days later, and on November 19th, and it was everything fans could have hoped for. A bigger, more ambitious version of what made the show great, with the heart and humor intact, even as the scale expanded. The story takes what could have been a simple plot and elevates it through character development and genuine stakes. When King Neptune's crown is stolen by Plankton, as part of his most ambitious scheme yet to obtain the Krabby Patty formula, Mr. Krabs is framed for the theft and sentenced to execution. SpongeBob and Patrick volunteer to journey to Shell City to retrieve the crown and save Mr. Krabs, despite everyone, including Mr. Krabs himself, believing they're not up to the task. The movie becomes a hero's journey, with SpongeBob and Patrick proving their worth not by becoming something they're not, but by being exactly who they are. The movie captures what made the first 3 seasons special. The humor is sharp and varied, mixing clever wordplay with physical comedy and absurdist moments. The animation is gorgeous, with detailed backgrounds and expressive character work. There are genuine emotional moments, particularly when SpongeBob and Patrick believe they're going to die in Shell City, dried out under a heat lamp. SpongeBob's speech about being just a kid, followed by the revelation that being a kid means you can have fun and be yourself, resonates as a thesis statement for the entire series. The movie also features one of the most memorable sequences in SpongeBob history, David Hasselhoff appearing in live action to carry SpongeBob and Patrick back to Bikini Bottom across the ocean surface. It's absurd and hilarious, and somehow works perfectly, and the kind of bold creative choice that defined the show at its best. The climax, with SpongeBob using the power of rock and roll and a guitar made from his own body to turn everyone in Bikini Bottom into free-spirited rockers, is triumphant and weird in equal measure. The movie was both a critical and commercial success. It grossed over $140 million worldwide on a budget of $30 million, a solid return that proves SpongeBob could work on the big screen. Critics generally praised the film, noting that it successfully translated the show's humor and charm to a feature-length format without losing what made it special. Roger Ebert gave it 3 out of 4 stars, saying it was a jolly film with a snappy, absurdist sense of humor. For Stephen Hillenburg, the movie represented the culmination of 5 years of work on SpongeBob SquarePants. He had created a show that exceeded his wildest expectations, turning his educational comic book characters into globally recognized icons. He had told the stories he wanted to tell, maintained his creative vision despite network pressure, and brought his series to what he considered a satisfying conclusion. With the movie complete, he was ready to move on. But Nickelodeon had different plans. SpongeBob SquarePants was the network's most valuable property, generating millions in advertising revenue and merchandise sales. The idea of ending the series after 3 seasons and a movie was, from a business perspective, unthinkable. The network wanted more episodes, many more, and they owned the rights to the show. They could continue production with or without Hillenburg's involvement. Hillenburg found himself in a difficult position. He could fight to end the show as he'd intended, potentially creating an adversarial relationship with Nickelodeon, or he could step back and let others take over while maintaining some oversight. He chose a middle path. Hillenburg would step down as showrunner, the person responsible for day-to-day creative decisions, but remain as executive producer, reviewing episodes and providing feedback while not being directly involved in production. To replace him, Hillenburg chose Paul Tibbitt, who had been with the show since the beginning, as a writer, storyboard artist, and director. Tibbitt understood the show's humor and characters, having contributed to many classic episodes, and Hillenburg trusted him to maintain the show's quality and respect its core values. In later interviews, Hillenburg explained his thinking. It reached a point where I felt I'd contributed a lot and said what I wanted to say. At that point, the show needed new blood, and so I selected Paul to produce. I totally trusted him. I always enjoyed the way he captured the SpongeBob character's sense of humor. The transition was finalized in 2004, after the movie's release. Production on new television episodes resumed, now under Tibbitt's leadership. This marked the beginning of what would become known as Season 4, though it's worth noting that the show's season numbering became somewhat confusing around this time. Some sources consider the movie as the conclusion of Season 3, while others place certain episodes produced before the movie but aired after it in Season 4. This transition period also saw changes in the production team. Some writers and directors who had been with the show since the beginning moved on to other projects. New talent came in, bringing fresh perspectives, but also slightly different sensibilities. Derek Dryman, who had been creative director, gradually moved away from active involvement in the series to work on other projects. Tim Hill moved on to direct other projects. The core team that had created the Golden Age was gradually dispersing. The immediate aftermath of Hillenburg's departure wasn't obvious to viewers. Season 4, which began airing in May 2005, still felt recognizably like SpongeBob. Episodes like Have You Seen This Snail told emotionally resonant stories. Skill Crane delivered solid character comedy. Krusty Towers created an entertaining premise and executed it well. For a while, it seemed like the transition might be seamless, that the show could maintain its quality even as its creator stepped back. But subtle changes were beginning to appear. The pacing felt slightly different, a bit faster and more frantic. The jokes sometimes relied more on characters screaming or getting hurt, rather than on clever setups and payoffs. The characters' personalities, while still recognizable, occasionally veered into exaggeration. SpongeBob could be more annoying than endearing. Patrick could be more mean-spirited than obliviously sweet. Squidward suffered more, and with less of the karmic justice that had made his torment feel earned in earlier seasons, and these changes weren't dramatic enough to alarm most viewers, especially younger ones who might not notice the subtle shift in tone. But longtime fans, particularly adult viewers who had fallen in love with the show's sophisticated writing and character work, began to sense that something was different. The show was still funny, still entertaining, but it had lost some ineffable quality that had made it special. The debate about where exactly SpongeBob started to decline in quality would rage among fans for years to come. Some pointed to Season 4 as the beginning of the downward trend. Others gave the show through season 5, arguing that it took time for the post-Hillenburg era to fully establish itself. Some fans would argue that the decline was overstated and that there were still plenty of good episodes being produced, even if the hit rate wasn't as consistent as the first 3 seasons. What's undeniable is that the creative transition of 2004 to 2005 marked a turning point in the show's history. The SpongeBob SquarePants that had aired from 1999 to 2004 was Steven Hillenburg's vision, created by a specific team with a specific creative approach. The show that would continue from 2005 onward would be something different. Still SpongeBob, still recognizable, but no longer quite the same show that had captured lightning in a bottle. Hillenburg himself moved on to other projects. He began work on short films, returning to the experimental animation that had first drawn him to the medium. He remained credited as executive producer on SpongeBob, reviewing episodes and occasionally providing input, but he was no longer intimately involved in the show's creation. He had said what he wanted to say with SpongeBob SquarePants, told the stories that mattered to him, and created characters that would outlive him. The movie, intended as a series finale, became instead a dividing line. Everything before it was the golden age, the classic era that fans would endlessly revisit and celebrate. Everything after it would be measured against that standard, sometimes favorably, often not. The show would continue for decades, long outliving anyone's expectations, but it would never quite recapture the magic of those first 3 seasons and that perfect movie. Post-Hillenburg era, seasons 4 to 5, 2005 to 2009. With Paul Tibbitt now in charge and production on new episodes ramping up, and SpongeBob SquarePants entered what fans would come to call the post-movie or transitional era. Seasons 4 and 5, airing from 2005 through 2009, represented the show finding its footing without Steven Hillenburg's direct involvement. These seasons are notable for being inconsistent, containing some genuinely great episodes that could stand alongside the classics, alongside others that demonstrated troubling trends in the show's evolution. Season 4, which consisted of 20 episodes totaling 40 segments, premiered on May 6, 2005, with Fear of a Krabby Patty and Shell of a Man. The season would run through July 2007, though production had actually wrapped much earlier. One immediate change viewers noticed was the increased emphasis on gross-out humor and exaggerated character reactions. Some episodes were more likely to feature close-up shots of disgusting details, characters screaming loudly, and situations that felt more mean-spirited than the Golden Age had typically allowed. Fear of a Krabby Patty, the season premiere, showcases both the strengths and weaknesses of this era. The premise is solid. Plankton tricks Mr. Krabs into keeping the Krusty Krab open 24 hours a day, hoping to exhaust SpongeBob to the point where he'll reveal the Krabby Patty formula in his sleep-deprived state. There are funny moments, particularly SpongeBob's therapy session with Dr. Peter Langton, secretly Plankton in disguise. But the episode also features extended sequences of characters screaming and SpongeBob being tortured by his own imagination, pushing boundaries in ways that don't always land. Other Season 4 episodes found better balance. Have You Seen This Snail is a feature-length episode that follows Gary running away after SpongeBob neglects him, and it's genuinely touching. Gary's journey leads him to an elderly woman who showers him with affection, but is secretly overfeeding him to fatten him up. The episode deals with themes of neglect, responsibility, and forgiveness in ways that recall the emotional depth of the show's best work. SpongeBob's realization that he's been a bad pet owner, and his desperate search for Gary feel authentic and earned. Skill Crane, another highlight, returns to simpler character-driven comedy. Squidward becomes obsessed with a crane game at the Krusty Krab, determined to win a prize. When he can't master it, SpongeBob easily demonstrates the technique, driving Squidward into a jealous frenzy. And the episode works because it understands Squidward's character, his pride, his desire to be seen as competent, his frustration at being outdone by SpongeBob. It's a return to the character dynamics that made earlier seasons sing. Krusty Towers, another Season 4 gem, transforms the Krusty Krab into a hotel where Mr. Krabs insists that the customer is always right. When Squidward quits and becomes a demanding guest, the motto is put to absurd tests. Patrick shows up as a guest as well, creating increasingly ridiculous situations. The episode builds beautifully, each escalation funnier than the last, culminating in the hotel literally collapsing from the abuse it's taken. It's classic SpongeBob, a simple premise executed with escalating absurdity. But for every Krusty Towers, there were episodes that troubled fans. Up and Good Neighbors features SpongeBob and Patrick driving Squidward to genuine fury through their attempts to be friendly neighbors, culminating in Squidward being forced into community service by a terrifying security system. The episode feels more cruel than funny, with Squidward suffering disproportionately for minor infractions, while SpongeBob and Patrick's behavior goes unpunished. The Thing sees SpongeBob trapped in cement and mistaken for an animal, leading to him being taken to the zoo. The premise is odd, and the execution is uneven, with the comedy often falling flat. All That Glitters features SpongeBob having an emotional breakdown over his spatula breaking, with the episode lingering uncomfortably on his distress. These episodes suggested that the writers were struggling to capture the precise tone that made the show work. As Season 5, airing from September 2007 to July 2009, showed the trends from Season 4 becoming more pronounced. The season included some of the show's most controversial episodes, ones that would be cited for years as examples of SpongeBob at its worst. But it also contained episodes that demonstrated the show still had potential when the writing was sharp and the characters were handled well. Friend or Foe stands as one of the season's best offerings. This episode reveals the backstory of Mr. Krabs and Plankton's friendship and rivalry, showing how they once worked together developing the Krabby Patty recipe before a falling out turned them into enemies. The episode balances humor with genuine emotion, making both characters more sympathetic without undermining their established dynamic. And it's the kind of episode that expands the show's mythology while honoring its history. Roller Cowards delivers straightforward comedy as SpongeBob and Patrick work up the courage to ride a roller coaster, while the original Fry Cook introduces Jim, the legendary Fry Cook, who preceded SpongeBob at the Krusty Krab. These episodes work because they're built on solid premises and executed with the kind of timing and character work the show excelled at when it was firing on all cylinders. But Season 5 also gave us Waiting, an episode where SpongeBob waits by his mailbox for a toy to arrive, refusing to move even as days pass. The episode's premise is too thin to sustain 11 minutes, and watching SpongeBob's increasingly desperate behavior stops being funny and starts being uncomfortable. Fungus Among Us features SpongeBob developing a gross fungal infection that spreads to others, leaning heavily into disgusting visuals without much comedic payoff. The most controversial episode of Season 5, and perhaps the entire series up to that point, was Atlantis SquarePants, an hour-long special that featured David Bowie as the voice of Lord Royal Highness, the ruler of Atlantis. Despite the impressive guest star and extended runtime, the special was widely panned by fans and critics alike. The pacing was sluggish, the songs were forgettable, despite being a musical special, and the story felt stretched thin. It was a major disappointment, especially given the resources clearly devoted to its production. And one noticeable change during seasons 4 and 5 was the increased focus on SpongeBob and Patrick's antics at the expense of other characters. Early seasons had balanced ensemble stories with SpongeBob-centric ones, giving Squidward, Sandy, Mr. Krabs, and even Plankton their moments to shine. But these seasons often felt like the SpongeBob and Patrick show, with other characters reduced to straight men reacting to the duo's chaos. When Squidward appeared, it was often to suffer. Sandy's appearances became less frequent. Mr. Krabs was increasingly defined only by his greed. The show's visual style also evolved during this period. The animation became smoother and more digital, losing some of the textured, hand-painted quality that gave early seasons their distinctive look. Close-up shots of gross details became more frequent, a visual trend that aligned with the increased emphasis on gross-out humor. The show looked slicker and more polished, but somehow less charming, trading character for production value. Despite these issues, seasons 4 and 5 weren't universally disliked. Many younger viewers who discovered SpongeBob during this era have fond memories of these episodes, not having the first 3 seasons as a point of comparison. The show was still massively popular, still Nickelodeon's highest-rated program, still generating enormous merchandise revenue. From a business perspective, the post-movie strategy was succeeding even if hardcore fans were becoming disillusioned. The critical reception during this era was mixed. Some reviewers noted the decline in quality, pointing out that the show felt more chaotic and less thoughtful than it had been. Others defended the show, arguing that it was maintaining its core appeal, even if some episodes missed the mark. Award recognition continued, with the show still earning Emmy and Annie nominations, though it wasn't winning as consistently as it had during the Golden Age. Behind the scenes, Paul Tibbitt and his team were dealing with the challenges of running a show that had existed in the shadow of its creator. They were trying to honor what Hillenburg had built, while also putting their own stamp on the series. They were balancing network demands for more episodes with the difficulty of maintaining quality over hundreds of segments. They were working with writers and directors who understood SpongeBob but hadn't been there from the beginning, who had to learn the show's particular rhythm and sensibility through trial and error. And the transition period of seasons 4 and 5 ultimately represented SpongeBob in flux, a show trying to define itself post-Hillenburg. Some experiments worked, others didn't. Some episodes recaptured the magic, others missed entirely. The show wasn't terrible, but it wasn't consistently great either. It had become something more typical, a successful animated series producing a mix of good, bad, and mediocre episodes, rather than the lightning-in-a-bottle phenomenon it had been during its first 3 seasons. As the show moved toward season 6 and beyond, the trends established in seasons 4 and 5 would intensify, leading to what many fans would call the show's dark age. But during this transitional period, there was still hope that SpongeBob might find its footing, that it might evolve into something different but still worthwhile, and that hope would be tested severely in the years to come. The Wilderness Years, Seasons 6 to 8, 2009 to 2015. If Seasons 4 and 5 represented SpongeBob SquarePants struggling to find its identity after Hillenburg's departure, Seasons 6, 7, and 8 represented the show losing its way entirely. These years, spanning from 2009 to 2015, are often referred to by fans as the Dark Age of SpongeBob, a period when the show's quality declined so precipitously that many long-time viewers stopped watching altogether. Episodes from this era are frequently cited as the worst in the series' history, and the creative decisions made during this period damaged the show's reputation among critics and adult fans. Season 6 premiered in March 2009 and immediately raised alarm bells. The problems that had been emerging in seasons 4 and 5, the increased meanness, the gross-out humor, the exaggerated character traits, became the dominant mode rather than occasional missteps. Characters who had been lovable despite their flaws became actively unpleasant. SpongeBob went from endearingly innocent to obnoxiously stupid. Patrick went from dim but loyal to genuinely mean-spirited and cruel. Squidward's suffering, which had once been karmic justice for his snobbery, became almost sadistic torture porn. The Splinter, an early season 6 episode, exemplifies everything wrong with this era. SpongeBob gets a splinter in his thumb and, fearing being sent home from work, tries to hide it from Mr. Krabs. The splinter becomes infected, swelling grotesquely as pus and fluids leak from it. The episode devotes extended time to showing this injury in graphic detail, and with disgusting close-ups that seem designed to make viewers uncomfortable. When Patrick tries to help, he makes things worse, hammering the splinter deeper into SpongeBob's thumb. Eventually, the entire thumb explodes in a shower of pus. The episode has no clever writing, no interesting character work, just 11 minutes of watching a character suffer through something gross. A pal for Gary might be even worse from a character perspective. SpongeBob adopts a second pet, a creature that turns out to be a monster that tries to eat Gary. But every time Gary tries to warn SpongeBob or defend himself, SpongeBob sees it as Gary being mean to his new friend. Even when he walks in on Gary clearly being attacked, SpongeBob blames Gary and punishes him. It's infuriating to watch, and turning SpongeBob from naively optimistic into willfully ignorant and abusive toward his pet. The episode ends with SpongeBob forcing Gary to apologize to the monster, demonstrating zero character growth or understanding. Someone's in the Kitchen with Sandy features Plankton stealing Sandy's pelt and suit, leaving her naked, covered by a towel, and unable to leave the tree dome. When she does venture out to try to get her suit back, she's arrested for indecent exposure. The premise is uncomfortable, and the execution doesn't justify it. There's something unpleasant about watching Sandy be humiliated and criminalized, while Plankton uses her appearance to trick SpongeBob. Season 7, running from July 2009 to June 2012, continued and deepened these troubling trends. A one-course meal stands as perhaps the single most controversial episode in the series' history. Mr. Krabs discovers that Plankton is terrified of whales because they eat plankton, and he deliberately exploits this fear to torment him. Mr. Krabs dresses up as his daughter Pearl and terrorizes Plankton, driving him to a genuine mental breakdown. The episode culminates with Plankton lying down in the middle of the road, explicitly attempting suicide, only to be stopped when SpongeBob reveals Mr. Krabs' deception. The episode then ends with Plankton using Mr. Krabs' fear of mime to get revenge, but this doesn't undo the deeply uncomfortable territory the episode explored. Having a character attempt suicide played for laughs crosses lines that children's entertainment shouldn't cross. A day without tears forces SpongeBob to go a day without crying, with his friends betting on whether he can do it. They then deliberately try to make him cry, doing cruel things just to win the bet. The meanness is the point, and it's not funny, just unpleasant. The card has SpongeBob trying to protect Patrick's valuable trading card, but Patrick keeps accidentally endangering it, and SpongeBob's increasingly frantic attempts to save it become exhausting rather than funny. Demolition Doofus features Mrs. Puff being permanently injured by one of SpongeBob's driving accidents, and she responds by trying to kill him. She enters him in a demolition derby, specifically hoping he'll be killed by the other drivers. When that doesn't work, she chases him in a monster truck, actively trying to commit vehicular homicide. Again, we have a children's cartoon depicting attempted murder, played for comedy, but not actually funny. Season 8, from March 2012 to December 2013, showed some signs of improvement, but still produced deeply problematic episodes. Smooth Jazz at Bikini Bottom features Squidward taking SpongeBob to a concert and SpongeBob ruining Squidward's evening through his behavior. But the episode feels like yet another entry in the Squidward torture genre. Are You Happy Now deals with depression in tone-deaf ways, showing Squidward unable to remember any happy memories and becoming severely depressed, including a disturbing scene where he lies in bed for weeks, letting a beard and long fingernails grow. What made these seasons particularly painful for longtime fans was that they represented a fundamental misunderstanding of what made SpongeBob work. The show had always been about an innocent character navigating a cynical world, finding joy despite obstacles, spreading positivity through his genuine goodness. SpongeBob himself had been a character you rooted for, whose optimism was endearing rather than annoying. Patrick had been stupid, but never malicious. Squidward had suffered, but usually as consequences for his own snobbery or selfishness, and never to the point of cruelty. But in these seasons, that balance was lost. SpongeBob became someone who caused problems through his stupidity and suffered no consequences, learning no lessons. Patrick became actively mean, hurting others on purpose or through stunning negligence. Squidward suffered not because of anything he'd done, but simply because the universe hated him. The show had become cynical, mean-spirited, and unpleasant, everything it had once stood against. The ratings, surprisingly, remained strong during this period. Children who were just discovering the show didn't have the golden age as a comparison point, and they found the frenetic energy and silly humor appealing. SpongeBob continued to dominate Nickelodeon's schedule, and merchandise sales remained robust. From a business perspective, there was little incentive to change course, but the show's cultural cachet was diminishing. Adult viewers, who had once celebrated SpongeBob as a rare children's show that worked on multiple levels, were abandoning the series in droves. Critical reviews became harsher, with critics noting the decline and questioning why the show was still on the air. Online fan communities became increasingly negative, with discussions focused on cataloguing the worst episodes and mourning what the show had once been. Behind the scenes, the production team was churning out episodes at a rapid pace to meet Nickelodeon's demands. The network wanted as many new episodes as possible to keep the show constantly on the air and to have fresh content for DVD releases and streaming platforms. This production model prioritized quantity over quality, giving writers and animators less time to refine scripts and perfect execution. Stories that might have benefited from another rewrite went into production as is. Jokes that didn't quite work weren't fixed. The writing staff during this period also saw significant turnover. Some writers who had been with the show for years moved on, replaced by new talent who hadn't been steeped in the show's original creative philosophy. These new writers had to learn the show's style and characters while also meeting aggressive production deadlines, leading to episodes that felt generic or misguided. Without Hillenburg's presence to guide the ship and with Paul Tibbitt stretched thin, managing increasing production demands, quality control suffered. Not every episode from seasons 6 to 8 was terrible. Truth or Square, a special celebrating the show's 10th anniversary, had its moments despite being overlong and unfocused. Back to the Past featured time travel adventures that were genuinely entertaining. It's a SpongeBob Christmas was a stop-motion special that captured some of the show's original charm. Our Planet of the Jellyfish delivered effective horror comedy. These episodes demonstrated that the show could still produce good content when the writing was sharp and the characters were handled with care. But the good episodes were outliers in a sea of mediocrity and active badness. For every It's a SpongeBob Christmas, there were multiple Splinters, one-course meals, and a pal for Gary's. The show had become a grind, churning out content without the care and attention that had once defined it. The magic that Steven Hillenburg and his team had created in those first 3 seasons felt impossibly distant. By 2013, as season 8 wrapped up, SpongeBob SquarePants faced an uncertain future. The show was still popular and profitable, but its reputation was severely damaged, and many fans who had grown up with the Golden Age had given up on new episodes entirely, content to re-watch the classics and ignore everything post-movie. The question was whether the show could recover, whether it could find a way back to what had made it special, or whether it would continue its downward trajectory until it finally was cancelled or faded into irrelevance. The answer would come from an unexpected source: the show's second theatrical movie and Steven Hillenburg's return. The second movie and revival, 2015 to 2017. In early 2012, Paramount Pictures announced that a sequel to the SpongeBob SquarePants movie was in development, scheduled for release in 2015. This news was met with mixed reactions from the fan base. On one hand, a new SpongeBob movie was exciting, potentially offering a return to the quality storytelling and humor that had been largely absent from recent seasons. On the other hand, given how badly the show had declined since the first movie, there were legitimate concerns that a sequel would simply be more of the same mediocre content stretched to feature length. The most significant piece of news, though, came when it was revealed that Steven Hillenburg would be returning to the franchise. He wouldn't be directing this time. That responsibility went to Paul Tibbitt. But Hillenburg would co-write the story and serve as executive producer with actual creative input. For fans who blamed the show's decline on Hillenburg's absence, this was the best possible news. Perhaps with the creator back involved, SpongeBob could recapture some of its original magic. And development on the SpongeBob movie Sponge Out of Water proceeded through 2012 and 2013, with Jonathan Eibel and Glenn Berger hired to write the screenplay based on Hillenburg's story. The film would feature a unique approach. The first 2 acts would be traditional 2D animation, while the climax would transform the characters into CGI versions of themselves, who could interact with live-action elements in the surface world. It was an ambitious technical undertaking that would allow for visual variety and spectacle. The movie's premise involved Plankton teaming up with SpongeBob and friends after the Krabby Patty secret formula is stolen by a pirate named Burgerbeard, played by Antonio Banderas. Without the formula, Bikini Bottom descends into post-apocalyptic chaos, and with its residents turning on each other in their desperation for Krabby Patties. SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, Sandy, and Mr. Krabs must work together with their former enemy Plankton to travel to the surface world and retrieve the formula. Sponge Out of Water was released on February 6, 2015, and performed exceptionally well at the box office. The film grossed over $325 million worldwide, more than doubling the original movie's box office take. Audiences turned out in large numbers, drawn by nostalgia for the franchise and curiosity about the hybrid animation approach. The movie's success demonstrated that there was still enormous appetite for SpongeBob content when it was done well. Critical reception was generally positive, though not quite as enthusiastic as it had been for the first movie. Reviewers praised the film's energy, visual inventiveness, and the chemistry between the characters. The sequences featuring the characters as superheroes in the surface world were highlighted as particularly fun. Some critics noted that the plot was chaotic and sometimes hard to follow, and that the movie didn't quite reach the emotional heights of the original film. But overall, the response was favorable. More importantly for the show's future, Hillenburg's involvement with the second movie reignited his interest in the franchise he'd created. During production, he began looking at recent television episodes and discussing the show's direction with Paul Tibbitt and the production team. While Hillenburg's role as executive producer had been largely ceremonial since his departure, he now became more actively engaged, offering guidance and feedback on episodes in production. This renewed involvement coincided with several other changes that would improve the show's quality. In October 2015, Mark Ceccarelli and Vincent Waller were promoted to be co-showrunners alongside Paul Tibbitt, bringing fresh leadership perspectives to the series. Both had been with the show for years, Ceccarelli since the first season, and Waller since early in the show's run, and they deeply understood what had made SpongeBob great originally. Season 9, which had begun in 2012, was split into two distinct halves by fans: 9A, 2012 to 2013, and 9B, 2015 to 2017. The dividing line was significant because Season 9B showed marked improvement over the dark age that preceded it. Starting with the episode Lost in Bikini Bottom. In March 2015, episodes began displaying better character writing, cleverer humor, and a return to the heart that had been missing. Lost in Bikini Bottom itself is a strong episode that features SpongeBob getting lost, trying to take a shortcut to work, encountering increasingly surreal areas of Bikini Bottom. The episode balances comedy with genuine tension and features the kind of imaginative world-building that recalled the show's best work. Tutor Sauce brings back the dynamic between SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs in a satisfying way. Mall Girl Pearl gives Pearl, Mr. Krabs' daughter, more depth and screen time than she'd had in years. What made Season 9B's improvement particularly notable was that it wasn't just a few standout episodes in a sea of mediocrity. The hit rate was consistently higher, and with episodes generally being at least decent and often genuinely good. The writers seem to have relearned how to balance the characters' flaws with their positive qualities, how to create comedy without cruelty, how to tell stories that had both humor and heart. Sanctuary sees SpongeBob protecting stray snails at the Krusty Krab, leading to chaos but also demonstrating SpongeBob's genuine compassion. Patrick. The game is silly fun, with Patrick creating an incomprehensible board game that his friends try to play. Bulletin Board features SpongeBob and Patrick creating a live bulletin board for children at a playground, delivering straightforward, wholesome comedy. These episodes weren't trying to be edgy or shocking. They were content to be funny and sweet, recapturing the tone that had defined the show's golden age. And the show also began experimenting with different episode structures and storytelling techniques. Yeti Crabs is told in the style of a nature documentary. Company Picnic features split-screen storytelling. These formal experiments showed a willingness to try new things while maintaining the show's core identity, something that had been missing during the years when episodes felt formulaic and uninspired. Season 10, which began airing in October 2016, continued the upward trend. By this point, Hillenburg was regularly reviewing episodes and providing notes, his influence helping to steer the show back toward its roots. The season included episodes like Whirly Brains, which imagines flying brain-controlled drones in Bikini Bottom, and Mimic Madness, where SpongeBob gets stuck imitating people and can't stop. And these episodes took absurd premises and executed them with the kind of energy and creativity that had been lacking during the Dark Age. The improvement during this period wasn't just about individual episodes being better, though that was certainly true. It was also about the show rediscovering its heart, its willingness to let characters have genuine emotions and relationships. SpongeBob and Patrick's friendship felt real again, rather than just being an excuse for chaos. Squidward's suffering was more balanced with moments where he got to be competent or even happy. The show was finding its way back to the balance that had made it work originally. Fan response to this Renaissance period was cautiously optimistic at first, then increasingly enthusiastic. Online communities that had spent years complaining about the show's decline began noting the improvement. Some fans who had stopped watching new episodes returned to see if the show had really gotten better. While there was debate about whether the show had fully recovered to Golden Age quality, most agreed that it was significantly better than it had been during seasons 6 to 8. The ratings remained strong during this period, with SpongeBob continuing to dominate Nickelodeon's schedule. But now the show was winning back critical respect and adult audience interest as well. The show was nominated for and won various awards, including Emmy recognition. Industry observers noted that SpongeBob, after years of coasting on its past reputation, it was once again producing content worthy of its status as one of television's most important animated series. Merchandising also reflected the renewed energy around the franchise. New product lines were launched, video games were developed, and theme park attractions were updated. The Broadway musical adaptation, SpongeBob SquarePants, the Broadway musical, opened in 2017 to critical acclaim and Tony Award nominations, demonstrating that the property could succeed in entirely new formats when handled with creativity and respect for the source material. Behind the scenes, the production environment had improved as well. With Ceccarelli and Waller as co-showrunners, there was better creative direction and quality control. The writing staff had stabilized, with many writers staying with the show for multiple seasons and developing deeper understanding of the characters. The production schedule, while still demanding, wasn't quite as punishing as it had been during the Dark Age, allowing for more refinement and revision. Hillenburg's health, though, was becoming a concern. In March 2017, he announced that he had been diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, a progressive neurodegenerative disorder that affects nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord. The diagnosis was terminal, though Hillenburg stated that he would continue working on SpongeBob for as long as he was physically able. The news was heartbreaking for fans and for the animation community, but Hillenburg faced his illness with the same optimism and determination that he'd brought to his life's work. Despite his deteriorating health, Hillenburg continued to contribute to the show through 2018. He reviewed episodes, provided feedback, and stayed involved in the franchise's direction. His presence, even limited by illness, helped maintain the quality improvements that had begun with the second movie. He also served as executive producer on the SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run, which was in development during this period. The period from 2015 to 2017 represented a genuine renaissance for SpongeBob SquarePants. The show that had seemed irredeemably damaged during the Dark Age had found its way back to quality, not by trying to exactly recreate what it had been in the Golden Age, but by remembering its core values and applying them with renewed creativity and care. It was a testament to the resilience of Hillenburg's creation that even after years of missteps, the show could recover when the right people with the right vision were in charge. As 2017 turned to 2018, SpongeBob SquarePants was in the best creative shape it had been in over a decade. The show was producing consistently good episodes, maintaining strong ratings, and rebuilding its cultural reputation. The future looked bright, even as Steven Hillenburg's health continued to decline. The question now was whether the show could maintain this renaissance, and what would happen when its creator was no longer there to guide it. There's Modern Renaissance, Seasons 10 to 12, 2017 to 2020. Season 10 marked the beginning of what many fans now call the Modern Renaissance, or Second Golden Age of SpongeBob SquarePants. From October 2016 through December 2017, and then continuing with seasons 11 and 12 through early 2020, the show maintained and even built upon the quality improvements that had begun in the late season 9. This period saw SpongeBob producing some of its best episodes since the original movie, with writing that balanced humor and heart, animation that pushed creative boundaries, and a clear understanding of what made these characters work. Season 10, with Vincent Waller and Mark Teccarelli, firmly established as showrunners, demonstrated confidence in its storytelling. Our episodes like Feral Friends imagined what would happen if Bikini Bottom's residents suddenly reverted to their actual animal instincts, with Sandy being the only one unaffected and having to survive in a suddenly dangerous environment. Don't Wake Patrick featured a simple premise: SpongeBob trying to do things quietly while Patrick sleeps, executed with perfect comic timing and escalation. Unreal Estate saw Squidward trying to convince SpongeBob to move away, only to realize he's gotten so used to having SpongeBob as a neighbor that he actually misses the chaos. It's a touching episode that acknowledges the genuine affection beneath Squidward's perpetual annoyance. Life Insurance has SpongeBob trying to injure himself to collect on an insurance policy, leading to increasingly elaborate attempts that all fail in comedic ways. And these episodes showed range, from slapstick to character study, all executed well. The animation during this period was particularly noteworthy. The show had transitioned fully to digital production, and the animators were taking advantage of the tools available to create more dynamic, expressive animation than had been possible in earlier seasons. Characters moved with fluidity and exaggeration that enhanced the comedy. Background details were rich and creative. The show looked better than it ever had, even if some fans missed the textured, painterly quality of the earlier seasons. Season 11, running from June 2017 to November 2018, continued the hot streak. Cave-dwelling Sponge introduced a primitive sponge that SpongeBob befriends, leading to complications when the caveman sponge's behavior causes problems in the modern Bikini Bottom. The checkup forces Mr. Krabs to get a physical exam, with SpongeBob trying to ensure his boss passes. Goons on the Moon send Sandy and SpongeBob to the moon in a fun adventure that recalls the show's willingness to go anywhere for a good story. Appointment TV is particularly clever, showing SpongeBob's increasingly desperate attempts to get home in time for a television special, with each obstacle more absurd than the last. Doodle Dimension brings back Doodle Bob, the crudely drawn version of SpongeBob from the Golden Age episode Frankendoodle, for a sequel that honors the original while telling a new story. These callbacks to classic episodes felt earned rather than cheap, demonstrating respect for the show's history. The show was also experimenting more boldly with format and style, and stop-motion episodes like SpongeBob's Big Birthday Blowout mixed live-action segments with animation. The Legend of Bikini Bottom was another stop-motion special that delivered Halloween-themed content with charm and creativity. These experiments kept the show feeling fresh and demonstrated that there were still new things to do with these characters after nearly 20 years on the air. SpongeBob's Big Birthday Blowout, which aired in July 2019 to celebrate the show's 20th anniversary, deserves special mention. The episode featured live-action sequences of the characters' voice actors in Encino, California, the real-world location above Bikini Bottom, interacting with fans and each other, while also solving a crisis back in the animated underwater world. It was ambitious, weird, and heartfelt, and exactly what a 20th anniversary celebration should be. The episode earned an Emmy for Outstanding Children's Program. Season 12, from November 2018 through October 2020, maintained the quality while introducing subtle new directions. Gary and Spot focused on Gary and Plankton's pet amoeba Spot going on an adventure together, giving Gary more agency and personality than he'd had in years. The Krusty Slammer turned the Krusty Krab into a prison overnight, leading to chaos as Plankton and other criminals were stuck there. The Ballad of Filthy Muck introduced a beloved trash monster that Bikini Bottom comes to love, only for Patrick to discover it's actually alive and needs to return home. Lighthouse Louie had SpongeBob and Patrick helping an elderly lighthouse keeper, delivering genuine emotion alongside comedy. Monanthandemonium featured Plankton's detachable robot limbs developing minds of their own and causing havoc. Escape from Beneath Glove World was a horror comedy set in the ruins of a demolished theme park. These episodes showed remarkable range, jumping between genres and tones while maintaining the show's core identity. One of the most significant episodes of this period was Krusty Love. Wait, that was actually a Season 2 episode. But Season 12 did give us Plankton's Old Chum, which featured Plankton trying to weaponize disgusting chum against the Krusty Krab, only for it to backfire. The episode walked the line between gross-out humor and comedy more successfully than similar attempts during the Dark Age, understanding that grossness works best when it's not the entire point. Throughout seasons 10 to 12, there was a sense that the people making SpongeBob understood and loved these characters again. SpongeBob wasn't just annoying or stupid. He was optimistic and kind-hearted. Patrick wasn't just mean. He was dim but loyal. Squidward wasn't just suffering. He had moments of triumph and happiness that made his struggles more balanced. Sandy got to be the smart, capable character she'd always been meant to be. Mr. Krabs' greed was played for comedy, without making him completely one-dimensional. Plankton remained the villain, but was given depth and occasional sympathy. The show was also doing better at incorporating lessons and emotional moments without being preachy. Episodes would naturally lead to characters learning something about themselves or others, growing in small but meaningful ways. And the show had rediscovered that you could be funny and heartfelt simultaneously, that comedy and emotion enhanced each other, rather than being mutually exclusive. Sadly, this Renaissance period was overshadowed by tragedy. Steven Hillenburg passed away on November 26, 2018, at age 57, his battle with ALS ending after less than 2 years since his diagnosis. The animation community and fans worldwide mourned the loss of a true visionary who had created something that brought joy to millions. Tributes poured in from celebrities, fellow animators, and countless fans whose childhoods had been defined by SpongeBob SquarePants. Hillenburg's death was a profound loss, but his legacy was secure. He had created one of the most successful and influential animated series in television history. He had proven that children's entertainment could be sophisticated and meaningful while still being accessible and funny. He had inspired countless artists and entertained multiple generations. And in his final years, he had helped guide his creation back to quality after years of decline, ensuring that SpongeBob SquarePants would continue as something worthy of pride rather than just a nostalgia property trading on past glories. The show continued without him, as he would have wanted. Vincent Waller and Mark Ceccarelli remained as showrunners, maintaining the creative direction that Hillenburg had helped establish. Hillenburg continued to receive executive producer credit on episodes posthumously, honoring his foundational role in the series. Production on season 13 and the SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run, which Hillenburg had worked on before his death, continued with the team determined to honor his memory and vision. By 2020, as season 12 wrapped up, SpongeBob SquarePants had fully completed its comeback. The show was no longer living in the shadow of its golden age or trying to escape the stain of its dark age. It had become something new, a modern animated series that respected its history while forging ahead with creativity and care. The modern Renaissance had proven that SpongeBob could evolve and improve, that it wasn't stuck repeating past glories or past mistakes, but could find new ways to be excellent. The third movie and pandemic era, 2020 to 2023. The SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run, had been scheduled for a theatrical release in 2019, then pushed to 2020. But the COVID-19 pandemic fundamentally changed its distribution. The film premiered in Canada on August 14, 2020, with a limited theatrical run before the pandemic forced closures. In the United States, the movie bypassed traditional theaters entirely, premiering on Paramount Plus, formerly CBS All Access, on March 4, 2021. As one of the streaming service's marquee titles, the film, directed by Tim Hill and featuring CGI animation like Sponge Out of Water's climax, but for its entire runtime, told the story of Gary being snail-napped by Poseidon, who wanted to use snail slime for his beauty routine. SpongeBob and Patrick embark on a rescue mission to the lost city of Atlantic City, a wonderful absurdist touch, encountering various obstacles and making new friends. The movie featured extensive flashback sequences to Camp Coral, a summer camp that SpongeBob and his friends attended as children, revealing how SpongeBob and Gary first met. Critical reception was mixed but generally positive for the film itself, with praise for the voice performances, the animation quality, and the emotional core of SpongeBob and Gary's relationship. However, The film became controversial within the SpongeBob fan community for different reasons, specifically the introduction of Camp Coral. Even before Sponge on the Run premiered, Nickelodeon announced Camp Coral, SpongeBob's Under Years, a CGI spin-off series focusing on 10-year-old versions of the main characters at summer camp. The show was set to premiere in 2021, and here's where things got complicated. Multiple sources, including Hillenburg's former colleagues, stated that Hillenburg had explicitly not wanted SpongeBob spin-offs made while he was alive. The assertion was that he felt the show should stand alone, that its universe shouldn't be expanded through prequels or spin-offs that might dilute the original's impact. However, other sources suggested that Hillenburg had been aware of Camp Coral's development before his death and hadn't actively opposed it, though he didn't live to see it completed. Vincent Waller later clarified that the chronology of events had become jumbled in his memory due to the grief of losing Hillenburg and another friend around the same time. The truth of Hillenburg's opinions on spin-offs remains somewhat murky, but the controversy highlighted tensions between creative integrity and corporate interests in exploiting a valuable IP. Camp Coral premiered on March 4th, at 2021, the same day as Sponge on the Run's US streaming release, with the first 6 episodes available immediately on Paramount+. The show was completely CGI animated, giving it a different look from the main series. The voice cast returned, with Tom Kenny, Bill Fagerbaker, Roger Bumpas, and others playing younger versions of their characters. The show focused on summer camp adventures, with SpongeBob, Patrick, Sandy, and even Squidward as campers, while Mr. Krabs ran the camp with various counselors helping. Reception to Camp Coral was divided. Some enjoyed the spin-off as harmless fun, appreciating the CGI animation and finding the summer camp setting conducive to entertaining stories. Others felt it was unnecessary and potentially damaging to SpongeBob's lore and Hillenburg's legacy. The debate highlighted broader questions about when it's appropriate to expand successful franchises and how to balance corporate desires for content with creative intent. Meanwhile, the main series continued. Season 13, which began airing in October 2020, maintained the quality of the modern Renaissance, while the production team navigated the challenges of creating animation during a global pandemic. Episodes like Under the Small Top featured SpongeBob and Patrick running a circus in Squidward's house, while Goofy Scooter saw them helping a sentient scooter. Pat the dog had Patrick temporarily working as Gary's owner while SpongeBob was away. The pandemic affected production timelines and workflows, with storyboard artists, writers, and animators working remotely. Despite these challenges, and the show maintained its output and quality, voice recording had to be done from the home studios, and the coordination of production became more complex, but the team adapted. Episodes continued to premiere regularly, providing comfort and entertainment to viewers, both children and nostalgic adults, during difficult times. In February 2021, it was announced that a second spin-off, The Patrick Star Show, was in development. This series would focus on Patrick and his family, with Patrick hosting a talk show from his house. Like Camp Coral, this raised questions about franchise expansion and creative direction. The Patrick Star Show premiered in July 2021, featuring traditional 2D animation like the main series, but with a different visual style and comedic sensibility focused on Patrick's even more absurd family members. And The Patrick Star Show featured Bill Fagerbaker as Patrick, with Dana Snyder voicing Patrick's sister Squidina. who was confusingly a starfish, despite having a name similar to Squidward. The show leaned into surreal fourth-wall-breaking humor, with Patrick's talk show serving as a frame for various sketches and adventures. Reception was again mixed, with some appreciating the experimental nature, while others felt it was too far removed from what made SpongeBob work. The existence of two spin-offs running simultaneously with the main series created a strange situation where SpongeBob SquarePants was becoming a larger franchise with multiple timelines and continuities. Camp Corral showed the characters as children. The Patrick Star Show existed in some ambiguous relationship to main continuity, and SpongeBob itself continued telling stories with the adult versions of the characters. For a show that had always been relatively simple and self-contained, this expansion felt odd to some longtime fans. Season 13 concluded in November 2022, and Season 14 began immediately, running through August 2024. These seasons continued the trends established during the Renaissance, with solid episodes that maintained character integrity while exploring new ideas. Single Cell Defense featured Plankton gaining superpowers. Swimming Fools had SpongeBob filling his house with water so Squidward could swim. And The Dirty Bubble Bass saw Bubble Bass working undercover at the Krusty Krab. During this period, Nickelodeon announced additional SpongeBob content in development. In March 2021, and Netflix revealed they were developing Saving Bikini Bottom, a Sandy Cheeks-focused hybrid movie combining animation and live action. The film would eventually be retitled Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks Movie, and feature Sandy and SpongeBob having to save Bikini Bottom after the entire town is scooped out of the ocean by a mysterious corporation. A fourth theatrical SpongeBob film was also confirmed in development in February 2022, with Derek Drymon set to direct. The film would eventually be titled The SpongeBob Movie Search for SquarePants, scheduled for December 2025 release. Additionally, a Plankton-focused film for Paramount Plus was announced as part of the franchise's expansion. This period from 2020 to 2023 represented SpongeBob at a crossroads. The main series was maintaining quality and continuing to produce good episodes. But the franchise was expanding in ways that raised questions about creative direction, corporate exploitation, and respect for the original creator's vision. The SpongeBob universe was becoming larger and more complex, but whether that was a good thing remained a matter of debate among fans and critics. What was undeniable was that SpongeBob SquarePants had become one of the longest-running animated series in American television history, surpassing Rugrats to become Nickelodeon's longest-running series by episode count. By 2023, the show had aired over 300 episodes spanning more than 2 decades. It had survived its creator's departure, weathered a significant quality decline, recovered to creative respectability, and lost its creator to illness. Through it all, SpongeBob persisted, evolving and adapting while trying to maintain the core values that had made it special in the first place. Current era, seasons 14 to 16, 2023 to present. As SpongeBob SquarePants entered its 15th and 16th seasons, the show found itself in an interesting position. Simultaneously, a legacy property with over 25 years of history and an actively produced series creating new content for contemporary audiences. Season 14, which had begun in November 2022, continued through June 2024, while Season 15 launched in July 2024 and concluded in June 2025. Season 16 premiered on June 27th, 2025, marking the show's entry into its 27th year of production. These most recent seasons have received mixed reactions from fans and critics, with opinions varying widely depending on individual viewers' preferences and standards. And Season 14 produced 26 episodes, though production was split, with the second half being renumbered as Season 15, to keep episode counts more consistent with how audiences consume the show on streaming platforms. This production quirk reflected how the television landscape had changed since SpongeBob's debut. Streaming services now played a major role in how people discovered and watched the show. Season 15, officially consisting of 13 episodes, premiered with Sammy Suckerfish on July 24th, 2024. The season demonstrated both the show's continued creative efforts and the challenges of maintaining freshness after so many years. Episodes like Unidentified Flailing Octopus gave Squidward attention as an unidentified flying object causes chaos in Bikini Bottom. Buff for Puff featured SpongeBob and his boating school classmates trying to help Mrs. Puff feel more confident. Some episodes drew criticism for being derivative of earlier, better episodes. Don't Make Me Laugh was noted as being similar to the Season 4 episode Funny Pants, but without the same level of execution. Pet the Rock served as a sequel to the classic The Great Snail Race, but felt unnecessary to many fans who preferred to leave that story alone. These episodes highlighted an ongoing challenge. After 300+ episodes, how do you avoid repeating yourself while maintaining what makes the show recognizable? However, Season 15 also produced episodes that were well received. 15 Minutes of Fame cleverly explored social media fame in Bikini Bottom. Upward featured SpongeBob and Patrick climbing a mountain, delivering solid adventure comedy. The animation quality remained high, with the production team taking advantage of modern digital tools to create visually impressive sequences that would have been impossible in earlier eras. Season 16, which premiered on June 27th, 2025, and is currently airing as of this writing, continues the show's tradition of producing multiple episodes throughout the year. Early episodes have showcased the production team's willingness to experiment with different storytelling approaches and visual styles. The show has embraced its status as a long-running series, occasionally making callbacks to its extensive history, while trying to remain accessible to new viewers who might be discovering SpongeBob for the first time. One notable aspect of these recent seasons is the show's awareness of its own legacy. Our episodes sometimes include subtle nods to classic moments or characters without being overly reliant on nostalgia. The writing team seems conscious of walking a line between honoring the show's history and not being trapped by it, wanting to create episodes that stand on their own while acknowledging the 25+ years of stories that preceded them. The voice cast, now veterans with over 2.5 decades of experience with these characters, continues to bring energy and skill to their performances. Tom Kenny's SpongeBob voice, while naturally aging slightly, along with Kenny himself, remains enthusiastic and optimistic. Bill Fagerbaker still brings warmth to Patrick despite the character's stupidity. Roger Bumpass's Squidward continues to be perfectly pitched between pretentious and pathetic. The consistency of the voice acting has been one of the show's great strengths, providing continuity even as the writing and animation have evolved. Behind the scenes, Vincent Waller and Mark Ceccarelli continue as showrunners, now having been in those positions for nearly a decade. Their tenure has provided stability and creative direction through the Renaissance period and beyond. The writing staff includes a mix of long-time contributors who've been with the show for years and newer voices bringing fresh perspectives. The challenge is integrating these new viewpoints while maintaining the show's identity. The show's cultural impact during this period has been interesting to observe. While SpongeBob no longer dominates pop culture the way it did in the early 2000s, it maintains a significant presence, particularly through internet meme culture. New episodes generate social media discussion, and SpongeBob reaction images remain popular across platforms. The show has achieved a rare status, beloved by both the generation that grew up with it originally and younger viewers discovering it now. Critically, the show receives less attention than it once did, simply because it's been on so long that reviewing every new episode isn't considered newsworthy. However, when critics do examine recent seasons, they generally note that the show has maintained a respectable quality level, producing solid entertainment, even if it rarely reaches the heights of its golden age. The consensus seems to be that modern SpongeBob is competent, occasionally excellent, and worthy of respect for its longevity. The franchise expansion continues alongside the main series. Camp Coral concluded its run in July 2024 after 3 seasons, having told its story of young SpongeBob and friends at summer camp. The Patrick Star Show was also ending, with the final episodes airing through 2025. The spin-offs had their fans, but never achieved the cultural penetration of the original series, suggesting that while the SpongeBob brand could support additional content, the magic was hardest to replicate outside the core show. Movie-wise, Saving Bikini Bottom: The Sandy Cheeks Movie premiered on Netflix in August 2024. The hybrid live-action/animation film focused on Sandy and SpongeBob having to save Bikini Bottom after an evil corporation scoops the entire town out of the ocean. Reception was lukewarm, as with critics noting that the premise was interesting, but the execution was uneven. The movie performed reasonably well on Netflix, but didn't generate the buzz of the earlier SpongeBob films. More excitingly, the SpongeBob movie, Search for SquarePants, the 4th theatrical film, was released on December 19, 2025. Directed by Derek Drymon, one of the original creative team members who worked with Hillenburg on the show's early seasons. The film brought that original sensibility back to the big screen. The movie follows SpongeBob attempting to prove his bravery to Mr. Krabs by adventuring with the Flying Dutchman, voiced by Mark Hamill, through the underworld. The film received mostly positive reviews from critics, and with many noting it as a welcome return to form after the disappointing Sponge on the Run, though it didn't quite reach the heights of the original 2004 film. Fans appreciated Dryman's involvement and the film's focus on classic character dynamics and adventurous storytelling. Additionally, Plankton the movie premiered on Netflix on March 7th, 2025, focusing on the diminutive villain and featuring his wife Karen prominently. The film, which follows Plankton's attempts to stop Karen after she decides to take over the world without him, received generally positive reviews, with critics noting that the musical comedy successfully gave Plankton the character depth needed to carry a feature-length story. As of early 2026, SpongeBob SquarePants stands as one of the most successful animated series in television history. How it has aired over 330 episodes across 16 seasons. It has spawned 4 theatrical films with a 5th in development, 2 streaming films, 2 spin-off series, a Broadway musical, and countless video games and merchandise. The show has won multiple Emmy Awards, Annie Awards, and Kids' Choice Awards. it has influenced multiple generations of viewers and creators. The show's current status is that of an elder statesman of animation, a series that has earned its place in television history while continuing to produce new content. Whether it can maintain quality for years to come remains to be seen, but the show has already proven remarkably resilient, surviving and recovering from challenges that would have ended lesser series. SpongeBob SquarePants isn't just a show anymore. It's an institution, a cultural touchstone, and a testament to the enduring power of good characters and creative storytelling. Cultural phenomenon and worldwide impact. To understand SpongeBob SquarePants' true significance, you have to look beyond episode counts and ratings to examine its profound cultural impact. Few animated series have penetrated popular culture as deeply or influenced as many aspects of modern life as SpongeBob has over its quarter-century run. The show became more than entertainment. It became a shared language, a cultural reference point, and for many millennials and Gen Z viewers, a defining element of their childhoods. The show's influence on internet culture cannot be overstated. As social media and meme culture developed in the 2000s and 2010s, SpongeBob became one of the most meme pieces of media in existence. The show's expressive character animation, our absurdist humor, and memorable scenes made it perfect for creating reaction images and memes. The mocking SpongeBob meme, showing SpongeBob with a contorted posture, used to mock others by repeating their words in alternating caps, became one of the most recognizable and widely used memes of the 2000s, spreading far beyond people who had ever watched the show. Other SpongeBob moments became meme staples. Patrick's "Is mayonnaise an instrument?" line from Band Geeks became shorthand for asking stupid questions. The image of SpongeBob and Patrick watching television with popcorn became the go-to image for watching drama unfold. Caveman SpongeBob from SB129, affectionately called SpongeGar by fans, represented primitive or basic reactions. Squidward's bold and brash artwork from Artist Unknown became a way to mock something that thinks it's high art but isn't. The show created an entire lexicon of quotes that entered everyday language. I'm ready became an expression of enthusiasm. Firmly grasp it was used when giving instructions. The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma became a way to humorously claim depth. Item a head out, a misquote of SpongeBob leaving to stand at the bus stop, became a way to announce departure. These phrases transcended the show, used by people who might not even remember they originated from SpongeBob. The show's merchandising success is staggering. By 2019, SpongeBob SquarePants had generated over $13 billion in merchandise revenue for Nickelodeon and parent company Viacom. SpongeBob's image appeared on everything imaginable: toys, clothing, food products, home goods, school supplies, electronics, and more. There were SpongeBob-themed foods from Kraft Mac and cheese to Kellogg's cereals to Burger King kids' meals. You could buy SpongeBob furniture, SpongeBob bedding, SpongeBob decorations. The character's square yellow face was ubiquitous in stores worldwide. Theme park attractions brought Bikini Bottom to life for visitors. Nickelodeon Universe theme parks featured SpongeBob prominently, with rides, shows, and character meet and greets. Universal Studios Parks hosted SpongeBob SquarePants, 4D attractions, short films that combined 3D visuals with physical effects like water sprays and moving seats. Movie Park Germany built an entire SpongeBob-themed area, And these physical spaces allowed fans to experience the show's world in tangible ways, creating memories that reinforced their connection to the franchise. The Broadway musical SpongeBob SquarePants, the Broadway musical, which opened in 2017 and ran through 2018, demonstrated that the property could succeed in high culture as well as pop culture. The production featured an original score with songs by rock and indie artists like David Bowie, John Legend, Yolanda Adams, The Flaming Lips, and Panic at the Disco. Tina Landau directed and choreographed a show that critics praised for its creativity and heart. The production earned 12 Tony Award nominations, including Best Musical, showing that SpongeBob could be taken seriously as art rather than just dismissed as kids' entertainment. Video games based on the show have been consistently popular. SpongeBob SquarePants, Battle for Bikini Bottom, 2003, became a cult classic, beloved enough that a full remake titled Battle for Bikini Bottom, Rehydrated, was released in 2020. SpongeBob SquarePants, The Cosmic Shake, 2023, received positive reviews for capturing the show's humor and style. Mobile games like SpongeBob Krusty Cook-Off attracted millions of players. The games allowed fans to interact with the SpongeBob universe in active ways, controlling the characters through adventures. Academically, SpongeBob has been studied in various contexts. Communication scholars have examined its humor and how it works across age groups. Psychology researchers have looked at how the show might affect children's attention spans and behavior. Cultural critics have analyzed what SpongeBob says about American society and values. The show has been the subject of scholarly articles, conference presentations, and even entire books examining its significance. This academic attention validated SpongeBob as a cultural artifact worthy of serious study. The show's influence on other creators is evident across modern animation. Many current animators, writers, and directors cite SpongeBob as a major influence, having grown up watching the show and been inspired to pursue animation careers. The show's blend of sophisticated writing with accessible humor, its willingness to experiment with style and format, and its balance of comedy and heart can be seen reflected in shows like Adventure Time, Regular Show, and other modern animated series that owe a debt to what SpongeBob demonstrated was possible in television animation. Internationally, SpongeBob achieved truly global reach. The show was dubbed into dozens of languages and aired in virtually every country with television infrastructure. Different cultures embrace the show in their own ways, sometimes emphasizing different characters or episodes based on local preferences. In some countries, SpongeBob faces cultural censorship, with episodes edited to remove content deemed inappropriate by local standards. Yet even with these modifications, the show's core appeal translated across cultural boundaries. The character of SpongeBob himself became an icon recognizable worldwide and comparable to Mickey Mouse or Pikachu in terms of global character recognition. His square yellow body and optimistic personality transcended language barriers. Children who didn't speak English could still enjoy the visual humor and physical comedy. The show's underwater setting was universal, not tied to any specific real-world location or culture, making it accessible to international audiences in ways that shows set in specific American contexts might not be. Charitable work has been done in Hillenburg's name since his passing. The Stephen Hillenburg Memorial Fund supports ALS research, helping to fund scientific work toward understanding and eventually curing the disease that took his life. Heal the Bay, the environmental organization that honored Hillenburg during his lifetime for raising ocean awareness continues to cite SpongeBob as an important tool for teaching children about marine life and environmental conservation. The show's cultural staying power is perhaps its most impressive achievement. Many children's shows are popular during their original run, but fade quickly once they stop producing new episodes. SpongeBob has remained culturally relevant for over 25 years, constantly finding new audiences while maintaining connections with viewers who grew up with the show. Parents who watch SpongeBob as children now watch it with their own kids, creating generational connections. The show has become a shared reference point across ages, one of the few pieces of media that baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z can all recognize and discuss. This cultural ubiquity has made SpongeBob a target for parody, homage, and reinterpretation. Other shows reference SpongeBob regularly, from Family Guy to Robot Chicken to countless YouTube animations. Artists create SpongeBob-inspired work, from paintings to sculptures to performance pieces. Musicians sample SpongeBob dialogue or create songs inspired by the show. The character and world have entered the collective imagination in ways that give them lives beyond their original context. The show's impact on language extends beyond English. In various countries, SpongeBob phrases have been adapted into local languages, sometimes taking on meanings specific to those cultures. The show has contributed words and expressions to slang in multiple languages, demonstrating how a piece of media can shape communication globally when it achieves sufficient cultural penetration. SpongeBob's influence on fashion and streetwear has been particularly notable in recent years. High-end fashion brands have collaborated on SpongeBob collections, bringing the character into luxury spaces that typically don't engage with children's properties. Streetwear brands release SpongeBob-themed clothing that's marketed to adults, playing on nostalgia while also appreciating the character's design and cultural cache. SpongeBob has become fashion-forward, a status symbol in certain subcultures. The show has also played a role in LGBTQ+ culture, with SpongeBob himself sometimes adopted as a queer icon despite creator Steven Hillenburg's statements that SpongeBob was somewhat asexual, and that sexual orientation wasn't something they were trying to explore in the show. The character's gender nonconformity, in terms of not adhering to traditional masculine stereotypes, his close relationship with Patrick, and his generally positive, accepting attitude have resonated with LGBTQ+ audiences. Nickelodeon's own official social media has posted SpongeBob content during Pride Month, acknowledging this aspect of the character's cultural reception. The subreddit r/Bikini Bottom Twitter, with over 2.8 million members, serves as a hub for SpongeBob memes and discussion, keeping the show's cultural presence alive and evolving. Twitter accounts dedicated to SpongeBob content regularly go viral, finding new ways to apply the show's imagery and dialogue to contemporary events and feelings. TikTok has seen countless SpongeBob trends, from recreating scenes to using audio clips from episodes in creative ways. SpongeBob has been referenced in music extensively. Lil Yachty featured SpongeBob and Patrick on his album cover. Travis Scott sampled SpongeBob in his music. Numerous rappers and pop artists have referenced the show in lyrics, using it as shorthand for nostalgia, childhood, or specific emotional states. The show's theme song has been covered and remixed countless times, becoming a recognizable piece of music culture beyond its television origins. The character has appeared in Super Bowl commercials, been featured in major marketing campaigns for products completely unrelated to the show, and become a celebrity in his own right. sometimes overshadowing the actual television program. SpongeBob the icon has in some ways become bigger than SpongeBob the show, taking on a cultural life independent of the episodes that created him. And this level of cultural penetration and influence is rare for any piece of media, let alone a children's cartoon about a talking sponge. SpongeBob SquarePants didn't just entertain people. It shaped how multiple generations communicate, think, and express themselves. It became part of the cultural fabric, a shared experience that connects people across demographics. That's the true measure of its impact. Not just that it was popular, but that it fundamentally shaped culture in ways that will outlast any individual episode or even the series itself. Production evolution and behind the scenes. The production of SpongeBob SquarePants has evolved dramatically over its 25-plus years on air, reflecting changes in animation technology, television production practices, and the industry as a whole. And understanding how the show is made provides insight into both its consistency and its variations in quality over different eras. The show's earliest episodes were produced using traditional cell animation for only the first few episodes of Season 1. SpongeBob is actually one of the last animated series to use any cell animation, with the bulk of Season 1 and all subsequent episodes using digital ink and paint. This transition happened early enough that most viewers never noticed a difference, but it represented a significant shift in production workflow. Digital animation allowed for more efficient production, easier corrections, and ultimately made the show's long run more economically feasible. The storyboard-driven process that Steven Hillenburg established for SpongeBob became the show's creative backbone. And unlike some animated series that start with full scripts, SpongeBob's episodes typically begin with outline documents that writers and directors then turn into detailed storyboards. These storyboards serve as the blueprint for the episode, with actual dialogue often being refined during the boarding process rather than being locked in advance. This approach gives storyboard artists significant creative input and allows for more visual storytelling. The writing process during the Golden Age involved close collaboration between a small team. Hillenburg oversaw everything, providing guidance and ensuring consistency. Writers would pitch episode ideas in story meetings, breaking stories together and building on each other's ideas. Once an outline was approved, a writer/storyboard artist pair would flesh out the story, creating detailed storyboards with rough dialogue and gag suggestions. These boards would be reviewed and refined through multiple passes before being sent to animators. Voice recording for SpongeBob happens relatively early in the production process, with actors recording in a studio together when possible. This ensemble recording approach, rather than having actors record their lines separately, helps create natural chemistry and allows for improvisation. Tom Kenny, Bill Fagerbakke, and the other main cast members have developed such familiarity with their characters over 25 years that they can now riff and improvise with confidence, often improving jokes in the recording booth. The animation itself has gone through several evolutionary stages. The earliest episodes were animated by Rough Draft Studios in South Korea, actually with a distinctive, slightly rough quality that added to their charm. As the show continued, multiple animation studios became involved, including United Plankton Pictures, Hillenburg's own production company, Nickelodeon Animation Studios, and various overseas studios that handled actual animation production. The process became more streamlined and efficient, allowing for faster turnaround times, but sometimes sacrificing the handcrafted quality of early seasons. Music and the sound design have remained consistently strong throughout the show's run. The show's composers, including Jeremy Wakefield and Sage Guyton, built an extensive library of Hawaiian-style music cues that could be mixed and matched for different scenes. The sound effects team created a distinctive sonic palette, with particular attention to the sounds of bubbles, our underwater movement, and the various squeaks and squishes that give Bikini Bottom its acoustic character. The show's sound design is so distinctive that fans can often recognize SpongeBob by audio alone. Production schedules have varied over the show's run. During the Golden Age, episodes were crafted carefully with time for multiple revisions and refinements. This attention to detail showed in the tight plotting and consistent quality. During the Dark Age, seasons 6 to 8, production ramped up significantly to meet Nickelodeon's demand for more episodes. This tighter schedule meant less time for rewrites and polishing, contributing to the quality decline many fans noted. During the modern Renaissance, the production schedule found a better balance, allowing for more care without being as leisurely as the earlier seasons. The pandemic forced significant changes to production workflows. Remote work became necessary, with storyboard artists, writers, and directors collaborating via video calls rather than in-person meetings. Voice actors recorded from home studios rather than professional recording booths, using equipment shipped to them by the production. While there was concern about how this might affect quality, the production team adapted remarkably well, maintaining output and quality through challenging circumstances. The expansion into CGI for movies and spin-offs required developing new production pipelines. The SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run, Camp Corral, and various specials used CGI animation, which involves completely different techniques and tools than 2D animation, and the characters had to be redesigned as 3D models while maintaining their essential personalities and shapes. Animators had to figure out how to translate the show's squash and stretch style into three-dimensional space. The results were mixed, with some viewers preferring the traditional 2D look, while others appreciated the new visual possibilities CGI offered. Behind-the-scenes creative tensions have occasionally surfaced over the years. When Hillenburg stepped down as showrunner, there were reportedly disagreements about the show's direction, though most parties involved kept these discussions private out of professionalism. The decision to create spin-offs, despite Hillenburg's alleged objections, created friction between creative and business interests. These tensions reflect broader issues in the animation industry about who controls creative properties and how to balance artistic integrity with commercial demands. The crew's demographics have shifted over time as well. The original team was relatively small and tight-knit, many having worked together previously on Rocko's Modern Life. As the show expanded and continued for decades, new people joined while others left for other opportunities. This created challenges in maintaining institutional knowledge and creative consistency. The current crew includes people who grew up watching SpongeBob, bringing fan perspectives, but also potentially making them overly reverent of the show's past, rather than pushing it forward. Pay and working conditions in animation production are often challenging, and SpongeBob's long run has meant dealing with changing industry standards. The Animation Guild, which represents animation workers, has periodically negotiated with Nickelodeon over wages and benefits. While SpongeBob is a highly profitable show, that profit doesn't always translate to generous compensation for the people actually creating the episodes. This reflects broader issues in animation about how revenue is distributed and whether below-the-line workers are fairly compensated for their contributions to successful shows. the show's production values have generally increased over time, at least in technical terms. Modern episodes look slicker and more polished than the early ones, with more detailed backgrounds, more fluid character animation, and more sophisticated visual effects. Whether this increased technical quality represents genuine improvement is debatable. Some fans prefer the rougher, more textured look of early episodes, feeling it had more character and warmth than the current polished aesthetic. International production has played a significant role in SpongeBob's sustainability. Like most American animated series, much of the actual animation production happens overseas in the countries like South Korea, where labor costs are lower. This international production pipeline is standard in the industry, but creates its own complexities, coordinating across time zones, ensuring quality control across continents, and managing cultural differences in understanding comedy and storytelling. Technology improvements have made certain aspects of production easier over time. Digital storyboarding tools have streamlined that process. Animation software has become more powerful, allowing for more complex scenes and effects. Online collaboration tools have made it easier for geographically dispersed teams to work together. These technological advances have helped SpongeBob continue production efficiently, even as the show has grown older. The preservation of SpongeBob's legacy has become an important consideration. Nickelodeon and Viacom CBS, now Paramount, maintain extensive archives of production materials, original storyboards, animation cells, voice recording sessions, and production documents. These archives serve both practical purposes, allowing for remastering and future projects, and historical ones, preserving the creative process for future study. And the materials documenting the show's creation and evolution represent a significant cultural history. The show's production practices have influenced animation more broadly. The storyboard-driven approach that SpongeBob refined has been adopted by many other series. The show's willingness to experiment with different visual styles within episodes, live-action inserts, different animation styles for flashbacks or fantasy sequences, has encouraged other shows to be more formally adventurous. The success of SpongeBob's ensemble voice recording has led other shows to prioritize having actors record together rather than separately. Looking at the show's production evolution reveals how SpongeBob adapted and survived, and the transition from Hillenburg's direct involvement to a show run by his successors could have been disastrous, but ultimately worked because the new leaders understood and respected what made the show work. The ability to maintain consistent voice acting over 25+ years provided crucial continuity even as writing and animation evolved. The development of efficient production pipelines allowed the show to continue indefinitely without requiring impossible time and resource commitments. The production of SpongeBob SquarePants represents thousands of people's work over more than a quarter century. Writers crafting stories, storyboard artists visualizing gags, voice actors bringing characters to life, animators drawing countless frames, composers creating music, sound designers adding effects, editors assembling episodes, and countless others in supporting roles. The show exists because of their collective effort, craft, and dedication. Understanding this production context helps appreciate SpongeBob, not just as entertainment product, but as artistic endeavor requiring skill, creativity, and collaboration from many talented individuals. The future and legacy. As SpongeBob SquarePants enters its 27th year of production, questions naturally arise about the show's future and ultimate legacy. How long will it continue? What will be remembered about it? What impact will it have on animation and culture going forward? While definitive answers remain uncertain, we can examine current trends and make informed observations about where SpongeBob stands and where it might be heading. The show's immediate future appears secure. Season 16 is currently airing, and with no announcements of the show ending anytime soon. Nickelodeon has expressed commitment to continuing SpongeBob for the foreseeable future, which makes business sense given the franchise's continued profitability. The show remains Nickelodeon's most valuable property, generating more revenue through ratings, merchandise, and licensing than any other show in the network's portfolio. From a purely commercial perspective, there's little incentive to end SpongeBob as long as it remains profitable. The fourth theatrical film, the SpongeBob movie Search for SquarePants, released in December 2025 and directed by Derek Dreiman, demonstrated Nickelodeon's continued confidence in the franchise's theatrical viability. The film's generally positive reception suggests that future theatrical releases remain possible, continuing SpongeBob's presence in cinemas for years to come. Streaming plays an increasingly important role in SpongeBob's future. The show's extensive back catalogue on Paramount Plus provides value for the streaming service, giving subscribers access to hundreds of episodes spanning the show's entire history. New episodes premiere on Paramount, Plus shortly after airing on traditional television, and some content, like the spin-off films, debuts exclusively on streaming. As the television industry continues shifting towards streaming-first distribution, SpongeBob's future episodes may increasingly prioritize streaming audiences over traditional TV viewers. The franchise expansion through spin-offs and films represents Nickelodeon's attempt to extend SpongeBob's reach beyond the main series. While Camp Corral and The Patrick Star Show have ended or are ending, the Sandy Cheeks and Plankton films demonstrate willingness to explore different corners of the SpongeBob universe. Future spin-offs or limited series focusing on other characters remain possible, though their success will depend on whether they can find compelling stories that justify their existence beyond commercial exploitation. International markets will continue being crucial for SpongeBob's longevity. The show's global appeal means it can sustain itself even if American viewership declines. In many countries, SpongeBob remains extremely popular with new generations discovering the show. This international audience provides both economic support and cultural relevance that extends beyond the show's home country. One challenge facing SpongeBob's future is relevance to contemporary audiences. Children growing up with YouTube, TikTok, and other short-form video content have different viewing habits than previous generations who watched scheduled television programming. SpongeBob's 11-minute episode format is actually well suited to attention spans shaped by short-form content. But the show must compete with unlimited entertainment options rather than being one of few choices available on Saturday morning television. The show's legacy is already substantial and secure regardless of how much longer it continues production. SpongeBob has earned its place in animation history as one of the medium's most successful and influential series. Future animation students will study SpongeBob's writing, character design, and humor, the way current students study classic Warner Brothers cartoons or Disney features. The show demonstrated that television animation for children could be sophisticated, that it could appeal to all ages without compromising its core audience, and that it could sustain quality over many years when properly managed. Steven Hillenburg's legacy as an animator and creator is permanently linked to SpongeBob. His vision of creating a show about optimism, friendship, and maintaining childlike wonder in an adult world resonated across cultures and generations. The fact that the show recovered quality after its dark age partly due to Hillenburg's renewed involvement, demonstrates how crucial his creative vision was to the franchise's success. Our future creators will cite Hillenburg as an inspiration and SpongeBob as proof that you can create something commercially successful without sacrificing artistic integrity. The show's influence on comedy and animation is already evident in subsequent series. The willingness to mix different animation styles, the balance between slapstick and clever writing, the creation of detailed fantastical worlds, the ensemble voice recording approach. All of these have been adopted by other shows that learn from SpongeBob's example. Adventure Time, Steven Universe, Gravity Falls, and many other modern animated series show SpongeBob's influence in various ways. Culturally, SpongeBob will be remembered as a generational touchstone, one of those rare pieces of media that defines a particular moment in time while transcending it. Millennials and Gen Z will always associate SpongeBob with their childhoods, similar to how baby boomers remember classic Disney films or Gen X remembers original Transformers and G.I. Joe cartoons. But SpongeBob also achieved something those franchises didn't: genuine multi-generational appeal, with parents who watched the original Golden Age now sharing it with their children, creating family bonding experiences around the show. The meme culture legacy ensures SpongeBob will remain culturally relevant, even if the show itself eventually ends. The imagery and dialogue have so thoroughly penetrated internet culture that they've become permanent fixtures. Future generations might use SpongeBob memes without having watched the show, similar to how people reference Shakespeare or Greek mythology without having read the original sources. The show has entered the realm of cultural shorthand. Academically, expect continued study of SpongeBob in coming decades. Film and television studies programs will examine its production, writing, and cultural impact. Communication scholars will analyze its humor and how it worked across audiences. Cultural historians will place it in context of early 21st century American media. As physical media becomes increasingly rare, archives preserving SpongeBob materials will become important resources for researchers. Merchandise and licensing will continue generating revenue long after new episode production eventually ends, if it ends. Classic characters like Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny remain profitable decades after their original content stopped being produced. SpongeBob has similar potential for enduring commercial value, with his image appearing on products for decades to come. The environmental legacy Hillenburg hoped for, using SpongeBob to increase awareness and appreciation of ocean life, has had mixed results. The show did introduce millions of children to marine creatures they might not otherwise have known about. Organizations like Heal the Bay credit SpongeBob with helping engage young people with ocean conservation. However, whether this translates to long-term environmental action from viewers remains unclear. Hillenburg's original educational mission, using entertainment to teach about the ocean, succeeded in creating awareness, even if measuring actual environmental impact is difficult. The question of when SpongeBob will end remains open. Some shows, like The Simpsons, continue for decades with no clear endpoint, and becoming institutions that persist almost regardless of quality or viewership. SpongeBob could follow that path, continuing indefinitely until some external factor, voice actor retirement, network decisions, catastrophic ratings collapse, forces conclusion. Alternatively, the show could receive a planned ending, with a final season or movie that provides closure to the characters and world. Given Hillenburg's original intention for the first movie to serve as the series finale, some fans hope for an eventual definitive ending that honors the show's legacy. Realistically, SpongeBob SquarePants will likely continue for at least several more years. The franchise remains too valuable for Nickelodeon to voluntarily end it, and there's no indication that audience interest has declined enough to force cancellation. We may see season 20 or beyond, with SpongeBob continuing to air new episodes into the 2030s. This longevity would make it one of the longest-running animated series ever, a testament to the strength of Hillenburg's creation and the adaptability of the characters and the world. Whatever the future holds, SpongeBob SquarePants' place in television history is secure. It entertained billions of viewers over more than 25 years. It generated enormous cultural and economic impact. It influenced animation, comedy, and popular culture. It survived its creator's departure and death, demonstrating resilience and adaptability. Most importantly, it brought joy to millions of people, children and adults alike, who found comfort, laughter, and inspiration in the adventures of an optimistic sea sponge who lives in a pineapple under the sea. The show's ultimate legacy might be its celebration of optimism, kindness, and maintaining wonder in a cynical world. SpongeBob himself, at his best, represents the value of approaching life with enthusiasm and genuine goodness. In an era often characterized by irony and cynicism, SpongeBob's earnest positivity feels almost radical. That message that it's okay to be enthusiastic and kind and weird, that you can be yourself and find happiness, resonates across generations. That's what people will remember about SpongeBob SquarePants long after the last episode airs. Not specific jokes or episodes, but the feeling the show created, the sense that the world could be a fun, friendly place if you approached it with the right attitude. Conclusion. From a simple educational comic book about tide pool creatures to a multi-billion-dollar franchise spanning television, film, stage, and virtually every other form of media, SpongeBob SquarePants' journey has been nothing short of extraordinary. We've traced that journey from Stephen Hillenburg's early days teaching marine biology through the golden age of seasons 1 to 3, weathered the transition period and dark age, celebrated the modern renaissance, and examined the show's current status and future prospects. The complete timeline of SpongeBob reveals a show that has grown, evolved, stumbled, recovered, and persisted through changes that would have ended most series. It's a testament to the strength of Hillenburg's original vision that the core concept has remained viable for over 25 years. And it's a testament to the dedication of the production teams who continued the show after Hillenburg that it could recover from its worst years and find new creative heights. As we've explored, SpongeBob isn't just a television show. It's a cultural phenomenon that shaped how multiple generations communicate, think, and express themselves. It influenced animation, comedy, and entertainment more broadly. It created joy for billions of viewers and provided comfort during difficult times. It represents the power of creative vision, the importance of staying true to core values, and the possibility of recovery even after significant missteps. The show that premiered on May 1st, 1999, couldn't have imagined what it would become. One of the longest-running, most successful, most culturally significant animated series in television history. As Stephen Hillenburg set out to create a show about an innocent character finding joy in a cynical world, about friendship and optimism and maintaining wonder, he succeeded beyond anyone's wildest expectations, creating something that will outlive all of us, a piece of culture that has become part of the collective memory and will be passed down to future generations. So whether you discovered SpongeBob during the Golden Age or the modern Renaissance, whether you're a hardcore fan who can quote every classic episode, or a casual viewer who just appreciates the memes. Whether you're a parent watching with your kids or a kid discovering the show for the first time, you're part of this incredible story. You're part of the legacy of SpongeBob SquarePants, the optimistic sea sponge who taught us that it's okay to be yourself, to stay positive, and to never stop laughing. Are you ready? Because SpongeBob SquarePants certainly is. Ready to continue entertaining, inspiring, and bringing joy for years to come. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the Cartoon Codex for more deep dives into the history of your favorite shows. We'll see you next time.